What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Distant. It is great to be able to have you guys here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, man.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
This is Ellen, vocalist. I'm Nuri, the guitarist. That is Elmer, the bassist.
It's great to meet you all. Thanks for being here. And I don't think there's a better band title to interview than Distant when you guys are in the distant and you guys are kind of in the middle of nowhere now, which I think is actually pretty. It just makes this interview a lot more poetic. But it's so awesome to have you guys here because your newest album, Heritage, I got it. It is absolutely epic, and it's definitely going to be one of the top albums of 2023. So far, this is the album that all the bands have to beat. For people who haven't heard the album yet, do you feel that the first three singles that you released, Exofilth, Human Scum, and Orphan of Blight, is a good representation of what this whole album is going to sound like? Or is this just scratching the surface of what's to come?
Scratching the surface.
Yeah. I think it's like we picked these three songs especially because each and every of these songs are basically really different of each other, but at the same time still maintaining like distant sound. So we basically tried to show like, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that. So check the album. It's gonna be that times 10.
Do you feel like it was continuing in a different vein than what we heard off of an album such as Aeons of Oblivion or any of your previous works in a way? And does this signify almost kind of like a new era for Distant, if you will?
I would say that it's definitely like more mature album than the previous ones. Like more time went into creating this, like especially here, and it's like direct continuation story-wise. But I think like this is like the benchmark album. Like this is like the truly the Distant album.
You mentioned, though, it's continuing in a similar vein in the story. Should a listener maybe listen to Aeons of Oblivion? Like, is your album series almost kind of like Lord of the Rings, where you need to listen to the previous album in order to get to the current album and everything like that?
Not necessarily, but yes. For Aeons of Oblivion, we wrote a book with Elmer. So me and Elmer wrote like basically the whole lore behind that album, which is 180 pages long, normal hardcover book. And yeah, we're still working out for the second installment of the book. So yeah, for the diehard fans, it's a must for sure to deep. But we made it. We made it so that also like people who are listening to us for the first time can still approach lore from within.
Was this lore always the vision of Distant from the very inception of the band, or did this idea for the lore of Distant kind of come as you guys were making more and more music together and sort of like finding your own identity?
I think like the fraction of it was still there, but we really solidified it during COVID when we had basically more time on our hands and we finally had a chance to focus on the world building. So it was always there, but not as much as when we finally invested the time into creating it actually to more solid thing.
Does the story of Distant, is there a time where maybe like your personal lives or your personal experiences are invested into the music as well in a way, or has Distant always been a means of escapism from who you guys are in your personal lives?
I gotta say it's like a whole journey. For example, when we started Thanatopia, we just wanted to play heavier music, and it was more riff salad, so it was like A, B, C, D, and whatever, just to make it heavy. But that's also what we like to play, of course. Then with the Eons, we started like more experimenting, like more different styles, genres, more metalcore influences. We don't have a limit to what we want to do. We want to experiment with every kind of style, so it's not one genre. And I would say, like for Heritage, we pushed the bars and we reached the limit. So we could really see what we are capable of, and there's still room for growth. But like if you compare it, this one to the first album, it's a huge difference, even instrumental wise.
When you guys are playing this music, whether it will be like in the studio or you're playing live on a stage, do you almost feel like you're, in a way, kind of like portraying the story and the lore? Like, do you almost feel like maybe on stage you're, in a way, portraying the characters of your story in a way?
Uh, yes and no, because at the same time, those stories that are basically coated in like the fantasy world and all that are still based on like life events that happen to us and stuff like that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's solely just role playing, but it's actually like most of the stuff is inspired by life.
When you
We just gave it a spark.
when
We just
you
gave it a sparkle of the fantasy. Yeah.
but when it comes to playing live, is there a similar energy that you guys channel into your live presence as you do when you are songwriting, or is playing live and songwriting two completely separate arts altogether?
A bit of both, but but when I start writing, I take in consideration like how will this be live? Does it give enough energy?
Yeah.
Because we want to be want it to be like heavy, raw, giving enough energy so people can enjoy it and having a good time, and not play something that's like boring or you don't feel.
I think if you compare like Eons of Oblivion and Heritage, Eons of Oblivion was written basically during the time where there was not a single tour happening. So we haven't really had the energy or like response from crowd from these songs. And to me, the album feels more like an artistic vision than like some of the songs are not like completely for a live show, but more like for the atmosphere. And with Heritage, at least as I see it, is that you could see that we've been back on road, and that's basically the live album, I would say, because every of the song will get you going.
Well, that was my interpretation of Heritage, actually. I felt like the way that this sounded like, it was almost sort of like a coming back with a vengeance sort of attitude, in a way. So, whereas I felt like previously, Eons of Oblivion, there was almost kind of like a desolation feel, or like maybe like an essence of hopelessness or pessimism involved. So, I would say that musically and sonically, it kind of goes along with the emotions that we were feeling.
Yeah, exactly. You got it, like nail on the head.
Thank you. It helps that I am a fan of the band too. And now you've expressed this through your music and through your graphic novels and all that. Can you see Distant though exploring other mediums to express your stories as well? Can we maybe get a Distant Marvel film or something like that?
Oh, we're hoping one day for a distant anime.
Oh wow, that would be amazing.
We're definitely considering all of this and looking into it, but like if you want to shoot a complete movie or something, it's so expensive. So like, how do you get the funds as a metal band for this?
Yeah.
How do you get the funds as a metal band? It's a death metal band. You got to do some organ harvesting there, my friend.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, we will see if we can get enough organs for this. But
Yeah, just put it out on Patreon. Patreon, accepting money and organs. You guys would definitely get plenty of attention in that regard. In particular, one song that I really thought of that I really appealed to me through Heritage actually was A Sentence to Suffer, in a way, because I thought that, like, with a title like that, is that almost kind of like something that you're telling other people in a way, or is A Sentence to Suffer rooted in your own experience?
I would say the interpretation is about the listener itself. because especially this song can be interpreted in both ways.
And is all your music?
But
Oh,
for me, for me, it was more like to someone, because there are other songs that are about suffering for the other end.
of course. Do you want like your music to be more open to interpretation, or being that you all put in so much effort into these stories that you
Yeah.
kind of want the listener to maybe be as engaged in the lyricism and the meaning as much as the music itself?
It depends from song to song, but most of them are more open towards interpretation, because even like story wise, most of the songs are not like a full chapter of the book, for example, like a fraction of a minute, or like one one feeling at that moment in the story. So some songs doesn't even capture more than 5 seconds in that story.
And could a listener's interpretation of it maybe add a different layer of context or meaning that maybe a song didn't have previously? The famous saying, when you put a song out, it immediately becomes theirs.
Definitely.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Now, instrumentally speaking, is it easier for all of you to come up with ideas for your instrumentation when you're more alone in your own element and more alone in isolation when there's nothing between you and your instrumentation? Or do you guys prefer to write more when you're in the company of each other?
I like to do it more alone because sometimes it's good to be with more people and write. It can give you like different ideas than I usually have. But at the same time, I like to be focused in my own element, and then I know what I want to go for. Because if you're with other people, it can go both ways. One thing, it's good because you think differently, but at the same time, everyone wants to have a say, and then it's like, yeah, what you're gonna do, and then you're gonna be stuck. So it's like 50-50. But I noticed I'm more productive when I'm alone in a room.
Right. Um, and when you're more alone too, and like isolation is always such a great fuel for creativity, right?
Yeah, it is.
Does all the idea for the emotional elements of your music, whether it would be through the lyrical concept or instrumentation, do you almost seek out the inspiration? Do you go out and look for it in a way, or does inspiration just strike when you least expect it?
It strikes when I not expect it.
Bit of,
Because
both.
the thing is as well, like for example with Heritage, I already started and like had to all nailed down. But when I couldn't go to the USA to play the Chaos and Carnage tour, but at the same time I was so pissed that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start writing something.
So not being able to make that tour clearly had its own benefits.
Yeah, and you also like notice it in the energy. At the same time, it's from the live situation, but more on the road. And at the same time, I was really pissed, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna step a bit away from all the slowdowns because like Eons of Oblivion and Terranotopia are compared to this album more slow.
I I had to miss Chaos and Carnage just because Slipknot was playing the same night in New York City. So different reasoning, but missing that tour was unfortunate for I think everybody who didn't get to see it. Um,
Well, you have a chance in March.
yeah, I'm just happy that I'm gonna have a chance to see you guys with Angel Maker and Body Snatcher. Even though I'm gonna be watching from the way back because I would like to keep my teeth at the end of that show. Um, but it's fair to say that even though like because people have categorized distance and regardless of how you feel, like people have categorized you guys in slam or deathcore or any of those genres, kind of like two questions in one. But first, I consider distant to have many different elements in your sound. I see many different styles ranging outside of just deathcore or slam. Is it fair to say that maybe experimenting with your sound and trying new things is almost part of the songwriting process?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't want songs to sound the same. Like, not even one. Every song has to be different. And I think if you stuck with the just one genre or the thing
Same
you usually
formula
do,
that worked out.
it's, I think you will come to a point it gets boring.
Yeah.
And besides that, like genres itself are just limitations. Like why would you need to stick with a certain genre?
Yeah.
Like we just like to play heavy music, and we make the heavy music that we like to make on that day. If we change it up next year, we change it up. We're not gonna stick to it.
Of course, and like I mean, it worked for ACDC on sticking with a certain sound, but their paychecks are a little different, so I think maybe a little different in there. But you're 100% right. Like I could see you guys, obviously people would appeal who listen to Whitechapel or Lorna Shore are gonna be fans of Distant, but I could honestly see
Yeah.
Distant being a gateway band for both sides. I think you could get the deathcore fans into other styles, and I think you could get people into deathcore as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do, and especially like we don't listen just to deathcore. We listen to all kinds of metal, all kinds of music, and we want to play what we like and what we listen. So that's basically where it comes with Distant as well.
Of
It's
course.
like we create what we like to do.
But people have called you both slam and deathcore as if they're two separate genres. And you're 100% right, too, that, like, the genre thing can get overdone. But from the perspective of the band that has been labeled, what would you say is the difference between slam and deathcore? I see just as many breakdowns. I see just as many crowd killing in the pit. I see just as much riffs and blast beats. Is there a noticeable difference between slam and deathcore?
I think deathcore is more polished. Slam is more raw and
More caveman.
more caveman, yeah. And definitely gargly vocals. That's that's the main difference, and infinite blast beats.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right with the raw form, because nobody would ever call Whitechapel slam in a way.
Yeah.
So, but I always thought it was like based on the size of mosh pits or something like that.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is because you have a sound that I think appeals to multiple audiences, but you could also, I've noticed, play in different venues too. Like on the Chaos and Carnage tour, like a venue like, again, like, as big as like Gramercy Theater, where there's a barricade and, there's a lot of, much bigger and more massive crowd. On this Angel Maker tour, the Meadows that you guys are playing in is a small, intimate venue. There's going to be more people on the stage than in front of it. It's going to be an intense show. Does the Distant experience change depending on the venue that you're playing with, or the tour packages that you guys could potentially be on?
Yes and no, I would say. I mean, for me, I don't know about you guys. I like the intimate shows more.
Same. I fucking hate barricades.
Yeah, because when there is a barricade, it's like I don't know.
It's like the energy is cut off because you don't have direct contact.
And definitely when there's a small venue that is packed, I'm fucking punching my face all the time. Rather than with the barricade, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of energy regardless of what's happening, but we like to absorb the atmosphere of the venue. So if the venue is going crazy and it's just a few centimeters in front of you, then you really absorb it. And we go extra hard.
Of course. Yeah, the barricade is like, I mean, I can understand why people would prefer it. It is safer, but like it is awkward. There are certain bands where if you see the barricade, it almost kind of feels off. I saw Code Orange playing in front of a big venue one time, and it was kind of weird in a way to see. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you both so much for your time today. Thank you for ending this year on a great note, and I cannot wait to see you guys on tour with Body Snatcher and Angel Maker. Just with the release of Heritage, is there anything else that you guys would like to promote that you're allowed to talk about? Of course, this will be uploaded by midnight tonight, so don't say it here if it's not announced yet.
Thank you for nice 2020. 2022. I'm still stuck in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, pre-order Heritage, as you heard from the man himself. The album's great. And yeah, see you next time in the US.
Yeah, we can't wait to have you guys
Cheers.
back. Thank you so much, everybody.
yeah.
We are here with Distant. Be sure to check out Heritage, coming out February 10th of 2023. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.